Hey everybody, David Alter here for Rink Toronto, presented by Bodog. Make a play, Canada's choice for free casino games, sports odds, and poker strategies. And tonight, the Toronto Maple Leafs are in Tampa once again. They didn't leave. It's a Game 4 of a best-of-7 series with the Toronto Maple Leafs leading it 2-1. And the big story coming out of Game 3 was really about the fact that Toronto got outplayed, had a lot of bounces that kind of went their way from the Morgan Rielly overtime winner, Ryan O'Reilly's game-tying goal late in the third period, and also a goal that Tampa scored that was called off due to an early whistle that would have made it 4-2 and perhaps taken all the wind out of the sails for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but it didn't happen. Everything went their way. The message from Sheldon Keefe and the rest of the Toronto Maple Leafs was that they just didn't play pretty well, and they've got to keep going and tighten up some things. And so there might be some lineup changes for two reasons. One of them could be because Sheldon Keefe said that 3 of his lines struggled in that, so there might be some mixing things up. But the other factor in that is that there are some game time decisions. It is the playoffs. Sheldon Keefe would not divulge who that might be. But speaking of the factor, Ryan O'Reilly's obviously been one of those in this series right now. And the big talk is about how, he doesn't really get nervous so much. He's been doing a bit of a leadership role on the team in terms of talking everybody up. Even when they were down 3-0 in game number 1, he's still keeping things very positive. Said it's something he's been talking to Sheldon Keefe about when he arrived in that trade from St. Louis back in February, as being one of those vocal advocates for the players on the bench. And you can certainly hear it and see it, and it's resulted in 2 wins for the Maple Leafs compared to 1 for Tampa. Also, Morgan Rielly had a big game in game number 3, scoring that overtime winner. He had the 4 assists tonight. I asked Sheldon Keefe before the game if he's noticed a difference in his game from the regular season to the playoffs. And, he kind of brought it out to a broad response about how when the playoffs start, everything reverts to zero. And sometimes maybe guys who struggled in the regular season look at it as an opportunity to kind of start fresh and really kind of get things going and end on a positive note. And Morgan Rielly is the longest serving Maple Leaf, and so he's been around for a lot of the pain. And perhaps game number 3, in addition to game number 2, where he tied the franchise record for points by a defenseman in the playoffs, but that game 3 game winner is just more of the cloud being lifted, more of Morgan Rielly breaking through, really becoming that number 1 defenseman for the Toronto Maple Leafs, which he's always been, but certainly came into question a lot during the regular season. So that's someone to continue to keep an eye on as well. But Tampa's got a lot of injury issues. We already know Erik Cernak is not going to be playing. Remember, he got injured in Game 1. Michael Bunting will serve the final of a 3-game suspension tonight, and then he'll be available for Game 5 when the series shifts back to Toronto. There's also Brayden Point. Remember, this was the big point of controversy, no pun intended. Morgan Rielly in a battle for the puck. Brayden Point gets hurt, comes back onto the ice later. John Cooper said yesterday that he kind of looked like he was in a car accident, but regardless said that he should be able to play, still called him a game-time decision. But you've seen in previous years what Tampa looks like without Brayden Point, so if he's not in, that's big trouble for Tampa. But that's why there is this push and belief that Brayden Point will likely be in the lineup as well. And so from that came the standard of officiating. Sheldon Keefe and John Cooper shared a war of words over if they felt that Tampa was manipulating the officials or not, because, they already knew they were going down 1 penalty, and it was going to be a 5-on-4 after that whole scrum that involved a whole bunch of guys, including a first ever fight for Austin Matthews, him fighting with Steven Stamkos. But they really just kind of shared the war of words today. There wasn't really any talk about manipulating the officials. It seems like it's a dead issue, but both sides kind of avoided the question about if they have figured out what the standard of officiating was going to be in this series. Game 1 and 2 were penalty filled. Game 3 was only penalty filled in that scrum, but outside of that, there weren't a lot of penalties. So who knows what to expect for Game 4, but you can expect the Rink-wide Toronto post-game show. Myself and Rob Wong will have that for you. Make sure you rate and subscribe on all of your favorite podcast platforms to Rink-wide Toronto, presented by Bodog, Canada's choice for free casino games, poker tips, and sports odds. Rink-wide Toronto, pre-game, post-game, every game.